there were the Indians. Delaware was an unnamed territory at that time, a land of thick forests and moving waters, a good land for the early hunters. These were the Indians history was to call Delawares, but that was later. They called themselves the Lenni Lenape, the first, the original people, the grandfather tribe of the American Indian. The Lenni Lenape lived along the Atlantic coast, from the Hudson River to the Potomac. For generations, the land we know as Delaware was theirs alone. Then in the 17th century, the invaders came. Both the Dutch and the English reached Delaware just 2 years apart. In 1609, an Englishman, Henry Hudson, under contract to Holland and the Dutch East India Company, made the first European discovery of Delaware Bay. Though dangerous sandbars prevented Hudson from exploring the bay itself, he did observe the shoreline and the Indians who lived there. He saw that the land was rich in furs. He knew the Dutch merchants would find this interesting. Hudson made such an enthusiastic report to the Dutch East India Company that Holland began to think seriously of sending trading ships to Delaware. Nothing, however, was done immediately. A year later, in 1610, a group of English ships were sailing for their American colony, Virginia, when some of them were blown off course by heavy storms. One of the sidetracked English ships, commanded by Captain Samuel Argall, happened to sail by a peninsula of unfamiliar land. Captain Argall, in passing, named the land he saw after the governor of Virginia, Thomas West, Lord Delaware. There is no record that Lord Delaware ever visited the place that bears his name, but the name became permanently attached to the place, Delaware. The English did not seem to be interested in Delaware in those days. But back in Holland, the Dutch merchants were making plans. And in 1613, the Dutch ships set sail for Delaware. They left with the definite instructions to trade for furs with the Indians, but not to colonize the land. And so the Dutch came to Delaware. They were the first Europeans to live and work in our state. Landmarks of the early Dutch are with us still. While the Dutch had not intended to colonize the New World, their interests turned more and more in that direction. In the first half of the 17th century, David Peterson de Vries decided to attempt a settlement.
We will fit out a ship, the Whale, and a yacht to carry on whale fishing, as well as to plant a colony for the cultivating of grain and tobacco.
In the spring 1631, De Valvis, the Whale, sailed into Delaware Bay. De Vries, still in Holland, waited news of its landing. The ship dropped anchor near the present town of Lewis. On landing, the colonists saw a gathering of wild swans, and they called their settlement Zwaanendael, meaning Valley of the Swans. De Vries and his settlers had high hopes, but there was one thing they could not know. 1631 was a good year for massacres. In September 1631, unknown to De Vries and his people, the English sent an expedition from Virginia to Delaware. The entire group of men was destroyed by the Indians. But from the first, the Dutch were on the best of terms with the local Indians. They felt the friendship to be so firm that their fort was not even a real protection against attack. The Dutch tried to make their community thrive. The whale fishing was never much of a success, but the settlers turned to the land and made it produce. De Vries knew that supplies were needed in Zwaanendael. He knew that more people were needed.
I must go to them with goods to make the colony more comfortable.
The colonists, 28 men, waited. A very small knot of people in the Delaware wilderness. These were people trying to live their usual lives under extremely unusual conditions. They were lonely and out of place. Holland was their home, and they had brought bits and pieces of it with them. They clung to reminders of their land. In the village of Zwaanendael, the settlers had raised a copy of the Dutch coat of arms. It was painted on tin and was not valuable. But to the 28 men, it was important. It represented home. To the Indians, it was only a shiny something, a pretty thing to be desired. One of the local chieftains especially wanted the coat of arms. He was not content to simply wish for it. One night, he took it. The Dutch settlers were furious. They saw no reason to hide their anger from the Indians.
Why have you done this?
We have been generous with you. Is this how you repay us?
We have been friendly to you. Why do you take our coat of arms?
Why have you done this?
The Indians were puzzled, and their tempers began to smolder. But on the surface, they were still friendly, and they settled the matter in the usual Indian fashion. The old chieftain paid for his crime. As an apology, the Indians presented the Dutch with the old chief's head. It was the custom. The Dutch, however, did not react as the Indians expected.
But this is worse. This is inhuman.
Did not mean for you to murder the man.
Why did you do this thing?
The Indians were disgusted, and more than that, they were very deeply angered. They had killed one of their own men for a foolish reason, and instead of forgiveness, they were met with horror. They had wasted a tribal member for ungrateful strangers. Their friendliness turned to something quite different. In their hearts, they plotted revenge, and soon enough, they put the plot into action. Most of the settlers were in the fields that day. Only 2 men were left in the village, and one of them was sick indoors. They had no reason to expect trouble.
You feeling better? Yeah. Some. What you want?
They wanted to trade for furs, they said. There was nothing unusual about this.
I'm busy here. Go in the cabin. The man there will talk with you.
Only one of them went inside.
Oh, want to trade, do you? Well, let's see what you have.
In the fields nearby, the same thing happened on a larger scale. The colonists, suspecting nothing, had no chance to defend themselves. The men of Zwaanendael, the animals they worked, all were slaughtered. They had paid with their lives for a piece of tin. The Valley of the Swans was no more. It was now a valley of death, founded and destroyed in 1631. De Vries arrived to find a dead town.
No man remains alive or even whole. Only the bones of the dead animals are left.
De Vries renewed the original friendship with the Indians. After all, they had no quarrel with him. But his colonizing spirit was dampened, even as the life had gone out of Zwaanendael. He left in a short time, and another colony was not attempted. It was the first Delaware settlement. It paved the way for other nations. Zwaanendael lived and died, leaving a flavor of Holland and a memory of swans.